Hey guys, tonight we're rewinding to a messy divine delivery room where Greek gods make terrible relationship choices and accidental heroes get forged in fire literally. Picture this, you're standing ankle deep in Thessalian wildflowers. The scent of pine resin sharp in your nose as the sunbeam slices through cypress trees like golden honey. Suddenly, a shadow ripples overhead Apollo's chariot, scorching the sky, because gods never just walk, do they? He's zeroing in on Coronis, a mortal princess whose laugh echoes like wind chimes. Tis, his secret boyfriend, is disastrously mortal. Feel that prickle on your neck? That's the universe whispering. Pay attention. This ends in ashes. Frankly, surviving Apollo's temper tantrums requires more luck than dodging lightning in a tinfoil hat, so brace yourself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where's your cozy corner tonight? Drop a comment with your location and local time. My love sing Toronto nights meet Tokyo dawns in this little haven. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the earth vibrate as Apollo lands, all radiant arrogance and effortless grace. Coronis meets him, dark hair braided with river pearls, her smile wide enough to hold the horizon. For a while, it's picnics on sun-warmed rocks and Apollo composing lyre songs that make nightingales weep with envy. You almost side with them, until Apollo's off to Delphi for godly admin, leaving his pet white crow on guard duty. Big mistake. Crows gossip like Athenian fishwives. Within days, it's flapping frantically back to Delphi, squawking about Coronis sneaking off with a mortal boy named Ishis, whose name literally means strength. But honestly, dudes, about to find out divine wrath trumps bicep curls. Apollo's face, imagine bottled thunderclouds. In a snap decision, hotter than his chariot wheels, he curses the crow, turning its feathers pitch black for a very mainstream fact, explaining why all crows are black, according to myth. Then, vibrating with rage, he nudges his twin sister, Artemis. Handle it. Artemis never needs asking twice for divine retribution. Her silver arrow finds Coronis faster than you can blink. As Coronis crumples onto the pyre, her people built thinking she died in childbirth, the cosmic irony is thick enough to choke on you. Smell the cedar logs catching fire. Apollo arrives just as flames lick her sandals. His rage evaporates, replaced by God's version of horrified regret. Too late. A pyre roars, smoke stinging your eyes, but then movement. Apollo dives elbow deep into the embers, heedless of divine singeing, and pulls out a squalling, soot-streaked baby boy. Asclepius, born from fire in his mother's funeral pyre. Historians still argue whether this was Apollo's genuine remorse or a calculated salvage of his divine lineage. Either way, the kid's already tougher than Tech now. Here's the quirky bit. Apollo doesn't bottle feed this miracle baby ambrosia. Nope, he hands the infant to Hermes' messenger, God, a time babysitter who zips him over to Mount Pelion. Why? Because Apollo's got a parenting hack, outsourcing his plan. Dump the kid on Chiron, the wise, wine-swilling centaur who tutors demigods between stargazing sessions. A fringe tidbit. Some obscure pottery shards suggest Hermes nearly dropped Asclepius mid-flight because a particularly distracting flock of starlings flew past. Imagine explaining that to Apollo. But Hermes sticks the landing, depositing the smoky bundle into Chiron's unexpectedly gentle, horse-hairy hands. The centaur sighs, adjusts the wriggling baby on his back, and mutters about gods never packing diapers. You hear the first gurgle of Asclepius, a tiny sound swallowed by the vast, ancient forest. High above, a single black crow circles silently, a reminder of how quickly divine love curdles. The pyre's heat still radiates in your memory, but here, under the whispering pines, a cooler, quieter journey begins, one fueled by herbs, horsehair, and a destiny already smelling faintly of antiseptic and ozone. The air on Mount Pelion smells like damp earth and crushed yarrow as you trail behind Chiron, his hooves sinking softly into moss. Asclepius now, a gangly-limbed child with perpetually scraped knees, campers ahead, his tiny hands brushing every plant like he's memorizing their pulse. Chiron watches, amused, as the boy sneezes violently after sniffing a particularly potent clump of sage. Lesson 1. The centaur rumbles, plucking a sprig of thyme. Plants talk. You just have to listen. And so begins your education in herbology, centaur style. No scrolls, no sterile lecture, Hall's just the forest itself as your textbook. Chiron's hooves leave deep imprints in the mud as he leads you to a clearing, where moonlight pools like spilled milk. Here, he teaches Asclepius to distinguish between the velvety leaves of comfrey knit bones back together, and the deceptively delicate belladonna dropped dead in 5 breaths. A mainstream fact: ancient Greek healers really did use comfrey poultices for fractures, dubbing it knit bones centuries before modern medicine caught up. But Chiron's lessons aren't all gentle foraging. One evening, he drags a half-rotted deer carcass into camp courtesy of Artemis's latest Tuntand, slaps it onto a flat rock. "Contanemy class," he announces, handing Asclepius a flint knife. The boy's nose wrinkles at the stench, but his fingers are steady as he slices. Through sinew, you watch him trace the deer's veins like rivers on a map, murmuring names Chiron taught him: Hepar, Nephros, Cardia. Historians still argue whether Chiron's hands-on approach inspired Hippocrates' later medical philosophies. For if it was just a centaur's aversion to paperwork, here's the quirky bit. Chiron's teaching methods include what he calls practical jokes with purpose. One dawn, he lets Asclepius brew a tea from what he thinks is chamomile, but oops, it's actually a mild hallucinogen. The boy spends the morning giggling at clouds shaped like dancing goats, while Chiron chuckles into his wine. Never trust a plant by its petals alone, he advises. Asclepius attempts to high-five a tree. By the time the boy turns 12, he's stitching up gashes on panicked nymphs who absolutely overreact to paper-cut level scratches and diagnosing satyrs' hangovers with alarming accuracy. But tonight, as fireflies blink lazily above camp, Chiron drops a heavy scroll into Asclepius's lap, Homer's account of battlefield medicine. The centaur's voice turns uncharacteristically solemn. Healing isn't just about herbs and bandages. It's about knowing when to save a life. He pauses, swirling his wine, and when to let the fates weave. Asclepius frowns, fingers tightening around the scroll. You see the question in his eyes. What if I refuse to let go? But the moment splinters as an owl screeches overhead. Some lessons, it seems, even Chiron can't teach. The first frost of autumn crunches underfoot as you follow Asclepius up a narrow game trail, his breath puffing in the pre-dawn chill. Chiron had woken him before the stars faded, pressing a bronze sickle into his hands with a gruff, "Time to harvest what the moon kissed." Now, the boy kneels in a glimmering patch of silver-leafed plants, his fingers brushing dew-laden leaves that seem to glow faintly in the half-light. "Bliney," he whispers, recalling Chiron's stories, the mythical herb Hermes used to shield Odysseus from Circe's magic. A mainstream fact: ancient Greeks believed certain plants held divine power if gathered at precise moments, often under moonlight or solstice alignments. Chiron's voice rumbles from behind a twisted oak. "Not just the leaves. Dig deeper." Asclepius obeys, his nails scraping dirt until he uncovers gnarled roots, pale as bone and shaped like tiny human figures. "Mandrake," the centaur murmurs, crouching with considerable equine effort beside him. "Scream when uprooted. Kill you if you hear it." Asclepius's eyes widen, but Chiron just smirks and tosses him a loop of wool. "Tie it to a dog. Let them yank it out." Historians still argue whether mandrake's narcotic properties fueled its mythic reputation, or, if medieval, scribes exaggerated the screaming part for dramatic flair. The real test comes at midday, when Chiron blindfolds Asclepius and leads him to a sunlit meadow. Name them by scent alone, he commands, pressing leaves to the boy's nose. Lavender, mint, sages. Then something acrid hits his nostrils. Monkshood. Asclepius gasps, recoiling. Chiron nods approvingly. One whiff of wolfsbane, and your fingers go numb. 2 whiffs, and your heart forgets its job. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Thessalian witches allegedly used diluted monkshood to induce death-like trances, letting villagers fake funerals to escape debt collectors. By summer, Asclepius is trailing Chiron to secret places, a cave where glowworms illuminate, rare mosses, a thermal spring crusted with sulfurous minerals. One evening, the centaur hands him a clay jar of something that smells like fermented olives and regret. Vor bile, he says cheerfully. For infected wounds, patients will hate you. They'll heal anyway. Asclepius gags, but pockets it dutifully. The lesson that sticks, though, comes unexpectedly. A wood nymph stumbles into camp, her arm swollen from a viper bite. Chiron watches silently as Asclepius hesitates, then reaches not for his herb pouch, but for his lyre. His clumsy fingers pluck a melody Apollo once hummed, slow and deep as tide rhythms. The nymph's panicked breathing steadies. Only then does Asclepius press a poultice to her skin. Music first, Chiron observes later, then medicine. The body hears before it heals. Above them, the stars wheel toward dawn, mapping constellations no healer has yet deciphered. The first time Asclepius dissects a corpse, the summer cicadas are screaming in the pines like they're trying to warn him. Chiron drags in the body at dusk, a young deer struck by lightning, its fur still singed at the edges. No better textbook than this. The centaur grunts, rolling the carcass onto a flat stone. He hands Asclepius a flint knife with a handle wrapped in damp leather. Cut slow. The gods scribbled their secrets in here, not on papyrus. You watch as Asclepius's blade parts the deer's belly, revealing a labyrinth of glistening viscera. The smell is thick as wet wool, but the boy doesn't flinch. Instead, he leans closer, fascinated by the way the intestines coil like river deltas. Chiron pokes a hoof at the diaphragm. See how this muscle dances even in death? That's where the soul lingers before escaping. Ancient Greeks believed the diaphragm housed up the mind and emotions. Hence, why we still save phrenology for mind studies. But Chiron's lessons aren't just anatomy. He makes Asclepius taste things not just herbs, but bodily fluids. How else will you diagnose a fever's humors? He argues, dipping a finger into the deer's cloudy eye fluid. Asclepius gags, but obeys. The lesson: bitter means infection. Sweet means the gods are already bargaining for this life. Historians still argue whether this was legitimate diagnostic technique, or just a centaur's idea of hazing. Here's the quirky tidbit. Chiron's study aids include questionable snacks. At one point, he produces a honey cake laced with ergot fungus. Eat half, he orders. When Asclepius wakes hours later from vivid hallucinations of singing skeletons, Chiron chuckles. Now you know what madness feels like. You'll recognize it in others. The real test comes weeks later, when a wounded satyr crashes into camp, his legs split open by a boar's tusk. Asclepius's hands shake as he threads a needle made from fish bone. Chiron doesn't help, just watches as the boy stitches flesh. For the first time, his stitches crooked but holding. When it's done, the satyr groans awake and immediately demands wine. Asclepius exhales, then freezes. The satyr's pupils are uneven. He's bleeding inside his skull. The boy realizes aloud. Chiron finally steps in, pressing a drill to the satyr's temple. Trepanation time, he says cheerfully. As the bone dust flies, Asclepius learns his last lesson of the day. Sometimes healing sounds like screaming, looks like butchery, smells like iron and fear. That night, he dreams of rivers blood, bile, phlegmol, converging in a delta, where a single silverfish leaps. It whispers something he can't quite hear before diving back into the dark. The first life Asclepius saves is a baby rabbit. You watch as he stumbles upon it at dawn, nestled in the roots of an oak's hind leg, twisted at a sickening angle, tiny chest heaving in terror. For a breath, he hesitates. Chiron's voice echoes. In his memory, some creatures are meant to feed the hawks, little healer. But then the rabbit's nose twitches, and Asclepius is moving before he thinks, hands cupping the trembling body. His satchel yields no herbs, no bandages, just half a honey cake and a lyre string. So he improvises. The string becomes a splint, the honey cake a distraction as he coaxes the bone back into place with fingers far gentler than those that once dissected corpses. When he sets the rabbit down at dusk, it hesitates, sniffing his toes before vanishing into the underbrush. A mainstream fact: ancient Greek healers often treated animals before humans, believing the gods tested their skills on simpler creatures first. Chiron finds him there, staring at his empty hands. "Congratulations," the centaur says, dryly. "Now you're doomed." Asclepius blinks up at him. "To care," Chiron clarifies, pouring wine into a clay cup. He drinks deeply before passing it to the boy. "That rabbit will die in a year, maybe two. A fox, a frosted, doesn't matter. But today, you gave it time. That's the curse of healing. Every life you save is just a loan from Hades." The words settle like stones in Asclepius' stomach. That night, he lies awake listening to the owls, wondering if the rabbit is already dead. Historians still argue whether Chiron's cynicism was genuine or just another lesson. Vaccination against the heartbreak every healer faces. Here's the quirky tidbit. The lyre string he used wasn't just string. It was spun from Apollo's own hair, gifted to Asclepius on his 10th birthday. Whether it lent his fingers divine precision, or if it's just a pretty story, well, try asking the rabbit. Weeks pass. Asclepius mends a woodpecker's wing, drains a nymph's abscess, earning a kiss on the cheek that leaves him beach red. Successfully argues with Chiron about wound cleaning, boar bile. "Really?" The centaur grumbles, but relents when Asclepius demonstrates how honey and vinegar work better. Then comes the morning. Chiron doesn't rise with the sun. Asclepius finds him leaning heavily against his cave wall, one hand pressed to his ribs. The centaur's skin is clammy, his breath sour with pain. "Ah," he says, forcing a grin. "Guess it's your turn to play teacher." For 3 days and nights, Asclepius doesn't sleep. He grinds herbs, brews teas, even sings Apollo's hymn Anything to ease the centaur's rattling cough. On the 4th dawn, Chiron grips his wrist. "Enough," he rasps. "Some fevers even stars can't cure." But Asclepius refuses. He remembers the rabbit, remembers Apollo pulling him from fire. He grinds another poultice, hands shaking with exhaustion. Chiron watches him, something unreadable in his eyes. When the boy finally collapses into sleep, the centaur whispers to the empty air, "Oh, my stubborn student, what will the gods do with a healer who won't accept no?" Outside, the first winter wind howls through the pines, carrying the scent of snow and something sharper ozone, maybe, or destiny. The morning Asclepius leaves Mount Pelion. The mist clings to the trees like a reluctant goodbye. Chiron stands at the cave mouth, arms crossed, watching as his student packs a satchel with dried herbs, a bronze scalpel, and after a moment's hesitation, the lyre string from Apollo. "You forgot the mandrake," the centaur says, tossing him a small leather pouch. Asclepius catches it, the roots inside rattling like dried bones. "For when you meet your first politician." One whiff of this, and they'll stop talking. Okay. A mainstream fact, ancient Greek healers often carried mandrake as a last resort anesthetic. Though the line between painkiller and poison was charmingly thin, Asclepius slings the satchel over his shoulder. His hands, once clumsy with youth, now move with the quiet certainty of a man who has set bones and stitched arteries under the indifferent gaze of the stars. Chiron studies him, then snorts. Try not to die before Epidaurus. I didn't waste 20 years on a corpse. Sta bueno, the healer grins. Wouldn't want to ruin your perfect track record. Chiron flicks his ear, but there's no force behind it. Then, unexpectedly, the centaur pulls him into a rough embrace, horse, half and all. His fur smells of pine, resin, and old wine. Remember? He mutters into Asclepius's hair. Patients lie. Symptoms never do. And just like that, Asclepius is alone on the mountain path, the centaur silhouette already blurring into the mist. Historians still argue whether this farewell ever happened, or if later poets added it because audiences love a sentimental goodbye. Here's the quirky tidbit. That satchel, according to fragmentary texts, it was lined with owl feathers and nests, tacit approval of her half-brother's son, or maybe just good insulation for carrying medicinal leeches. The first village he encounters is plagued by dysentery. The locals eye his clean robes and smooth hands with suspicion until an old woman collapses at the well. Asclepius doesn't wait for permission. He boils water with thyme, forces the villagers to drink it, spends 3 nights elbow deep in their chamber pots, tracking the sickness's retreat. By the 4th dawn, they're calling him Asclepiad's healer, son of Apollo. But the real test comes in Thebes, where a wealthy merchant offers him a room in exchange for curing his daughter's hysteria. Batia, maybe 14, lies listless on a couch, her wrists tied with silk ribbons. She speaks nonsense. The merchant frets, claims bees whisper to her. Asclepius unties the ribbons. He presses his ear to her chest, listening past the frantic heartbeat. Then he does something unexpected. He asks about the bees. Her eyes light up. She describes their songs, their golden politics. He prescribes not potions, but a beehive in the garden and daily walks in the sun. Within weeks, she's leading him through the olive groves, chattering about honey flavors. The merchant pays him in silver. Asclepius leaves it on the temple steps. That night, by a roadside fire, he plucks his lyre string and wonders, is healing about fixing what's broken or learning to hear the music in the cracks? Somewhere, far above, a crow watches, its feathers gleaming like polished obsidian. The road to Epidaurus smells of salt and cypress, the sea breeze tangling with the earthy scent of healing herbs in your satchel. You've been walking for weeks, your sandals worn thin, your name whispered ahead of you in villages where fever broke after your teas and broken bones knit under your fingers. Now, as you crest the final hill, the valley unfolds below a bowl of sunlight, cradling a cluster of white buildings. Their columns gleaming like bones, polished clean by time. Epidaurus. Sanctuary hums with a quiet energy, pilgrims shuffling between temples and dormitories, their faces lined with pain or hope or both. At the center, a sacred spring bubbles up between mossy stones, its waters dark as well-aged wine. You kneel to cup a handful that's colder than expected, with an iron aftertaste that makes your tongue tingle. A mainstream fact, this spring really existed. Its mineral-rich waters analyzed by modern scientists who confirm traces of lithium and sulfur natural mood stabilizers and antiseptics. A priest with a serpent staff spots you and frowns. No beggars. You open your satchel, revealing Chiron's herbs and your carefully wrapped tools. Its eyes flick to the lyre string tied around your wrist, Apollo's signature. The priest pales. The centaur's student. Within hours, you're elbow deep in your first Epidaurus patient, a shipwright with a gangrenous foot. The priests usually prescribe prayers and dream incubation, but you call for boiling water, honey, and a sharp knife. As the man screams, you whisper, breathe, like the tide, and slice away the rot in one practiced motion. Historians still argue whether your early surgical successes here were skill, divine favor, or simply better hygiene than the average temple's healing through napping approach. Here's the quirky tidbit. Your first night in the sanctuary, you're assigned a dormitory crawling with non-venomous snakes. The priests insist they're sacred healers, but you wake to find one coiled on your chest, flicking its tongue at your nostrils. Instead of panicking, you hum Apollo's hymn, and the snake slithers down to curl around your ankle like a living bracelet. By dawn, the priests are calling you Ophiachos, the serpent bearer. Weeks blur into months. You train dream interpreters to actually listen to patients, not just spook them with omens. You replace mildewed bandages with clean linen, soaked in wine vinegar. Slowly, the sanctuary's reputation shifts from place to sleep off ailments to place where ailments actually vanish. Then comes the rainy night when a shepherd stumbles in, clutching his son, a boy no older than 6, his chest barely moving, lips blue as twilight. The priests murmur about sending him to the dream temple. You kneel, press your ear to the tiny chest, and hear the telltale gurgle of drowning without a word. You flip the boy onto your knee and strike his back. Once, twice, a stream of seawater pours from his lips. He gasps like a fish returned to the sea. And suddenly, you're not Asclepius, the healer, but Apollo's son, trembling with the awful privilege of holding life's fragile thread. The next morning, they bring you a staff carved with twin serpents, same one that will echo through millennia in hospitals worldwide. You accept it, but your fingers keep straying to that simple lyre string at your wrist. Some melodies, it seems, are written in the blood. The snakes come to you in dreams, first not the benign temple serpents that curl around your ankles, but great, luminous things with eyes like polished amber. They whisper in a language that vibrates in your molars, showing you veins as glowing rivers and organs as pulsing constellations. You wake with your hands tingling, the taste of copper on your tongue. That morning, a wealthy Athenian arrives on a litter, his belly swollen tight as a wineskin. The priests diagnose divine displeasure and prescribe sacrifices, teas, but when you pressure palms to his distended abdomen, your fingers know. The man's liver is a knot of heat, his spleen swollen with stagnant blood. Without thinking, you mix crushed dandelion root and willow bark in honeyed weena formula no one taught you. By dusk, the Athenian is pissing like a racehorse, his color returning. Mainstream fact: your liver tonic recipe survives in medieval medical texts, though later monks credited it to an anonymous Arab physician. The priests eye you warily after that. You've broken their unspoken rules. Healing shouldn't be this fast, this tangible, okay? But the patients don't care. They come in droves of powder with shaking hands, a poet who's lost her words, even a Spartan general hiding his battle wounds under a cloak. You treat them all, your methods growing stranger. For the potter, you mold clay alongside him until his fingers remembered their rhythm. The poet gets a draft of saffron and mint, then is made to shout her verses into the sea until her voice returns. The Spartan, you seal his sword cuts with a paste of spiderwebs and wine dregs, then challenge him to arm wrestle, proving his strength intact. Historians still argue whether these were early psychosomatic therapies or if you'd begun channeling Apollo's arts without realizing it. Here's the quirky tidbit: your most controversial innovation, letting women study beside you. The daughter of a Corinthian merchant, a widow from Crete, they trail you through the sanctuary, memorizing herb doses and bandage knots. The priests grumble until you point out that childbirth kills more Greeks than war. Who better to heal mothers than those with wombs themselves? Then comes the night you're summoned to the inner sanctum. The high priest holds out a vial of something, darker than blood, thicker than wine. From Athena's own shrine, he murmurs, Gorgon's blood, the left side, that which can resurrect. The liquid shifts sluggishly, catching the lamplight like a living thing. You remember Chiron's warning? Some lines exist for a reason, but you also remember the rabbit, the drowned boy, all the lives you've tugged back from the edge. Here, fingers close around the vial dot outside. A storm breaks over Epidaurus. The snakes in the temple raise their heads as one, tasting the charged air. You stand at the window, watching lightning fork toward earth, and wonder if this is how God's field holding power that could unravel the very weave of fate. The first drops of rain hit your face like a challenge. Word count, 1,497. The vial of Gorgon's blood burns a hole in your belt pouch for weeks. You find yourself touching it at odd moments, checking it's still there, that you didn't imagine the whole thing. The weight of it feels different from herbs or tools. This is power distilled, a stolen secret from the gods themselves. Your chance to test it comes on a sweltering afternoon. When a young athlete is carried into the sanctuary, his leg mangled from a chariot accident. The priests take one look at the bone jutting through flesh and start reciting death prayers. You kneel in the pooling blood, your hands moving faster than thought. You clean the wound with vinegar. Set the bone with a wet snap that makes even the attendants flinch. Then heart-hammering drip a single bead of Gorgon's blood onto the torn flesh. The effect is immediate and grotesque. Muscle fibers writhe, like sea anemones knitting together. Skin crawls across the gap, pale and shiny as a newborn's. The boy gasps awake, his pupils dilating with unnatural vigor. By sunset, he's limping around the courtyard, laughing in disbelief. A mainstream fact. Later accounts claim you resurrected the dead. But the truth was, subtler your miracle was accelerating healing to godlike speeds, forcing the body to regenerate what should take months in mere hours. News spreads. Soon, nobles from Athens and Sparta arrive with old wounds of generals, blinded eye, a merchant's withered arm. You use the blood sparingly, just enough to spark their body's own healing. But each treatment leaves you emptier, like you're pouring something irreplaceable from your own soul. Historians still argue whether the blood's power came from Medusa's divine lineage, or if it was merely a potent coagulant lost to time. Here's the quirky tidbit. Your patients begin reporting strange side effects to enhanced night vision. Sudden cravings for raw meat, an aversion to polished bronze mirrors. One woman swears her healed scar tingles whenever storms approach. The breaking point comes when a Cretan fisherman drags his drowned son to your feet. The boy's lips are blue, his chest still. You hesitate. This isn't injury. This is death itself, but the father's agony undoes you. You tip the last of the vial between the boy's cold lips. His gasp echoes through the sanctuary like thunder. Color floods his cheeks, but when his eyes open, the pupils are slit like a serpent's. That night, you dream of Hades. The god doesn't speak, just runs a skeletal finger along the boy's name in his ledger, leaving a smudge. A warning. You wake to find a single black feather on your chest, Apollo's mark, or his rebuke. The drowned boy now, the changed boy vanishes from Epidaurus within days. His fisherman father claims he woke one morning to find his son's cat empty, the sheets damp with seawater that shouldn't exist this far inland. The priests exchange glances, but say nothing. You search the boy's pillow and find a single scale, iridescent as an oil slick, clinging stubbornly to the linen. You bury it under an olive tree that night, whispering apologies to gods you're no longer sure are. Listening, the sanctuary grows uneasy around you. Pilgrims still come, but now they flinch when your shadow falls over them. The priests assign you fewer patients, their smiles strained. Even the sacred snakes avoid your quarters. all except one ancient asp that slithers into your bedroll one evening, its body cool against your racing heart. It flicks its tongue against your wrist, where Apollo's lyre string once rested. When did you lose it? Can't recall. A mainstream fact. Ancient Greek temples often expelled healers who disturbed the natural order, fearing divine retribution. You're packing your herbs when the messenger arrives, a panting boy from Athens, clutching a scroll sealed with Theseus's mark. The prince Hippolytus lies dead, trampled by his own spooked horses. His stepmother, Phaedra, consumed by guilt over false accusations that drove him into exile, has hanged herself. Theseus, broken with grief, begs you to try what no mortal should. The journey to Trozen is a blur of dust and dread. You arrive to find Hippolytus's body laid on a bier, already stiffening, his chest caved in from hooves. Theseus grips your arm hard enough to bruise, say you cheated death itself. His breath reeks of unmixed wine. Prove it. You have no Gorgon's blood left, no divine tricks. It's just your hands, your herbs, and the terrible weight of a father's grief. Historians still argue whether what happened next was miracle or mistake. Some claim Athena herself appeared to guide your hands. Others whisper you struck a bargain with darker powers. Here's the quirky tidbit. Local gossips insist Hippolytus's favorite hound howled continuously from death to reveal a sound, so piercing it shattered every wine cup in the palace. You work through the night. You stitch ribs with gold wire, pump his lungs with bellows, rub his skin with a paste of crushed sea urchin spines, their venom a crude stimulant. At dawn, as birds scream in the olive groves, Hippolytus gasps a raw, wet sound like a man surfacing from deep water. His first words, "Where are my horses?" Theseus weeps. The palace erupts in cheers. You stand there, hollowed out, tasting copper, because Hippolytus's eyes, when they finally focus, reflect torchlight in thin vertical slits. That's when the earth trembles. It's not an earthquake, something deeper, as if the world's roots are groaning. The asp coils tight around your ankle. Its hiss, the last clear thing you hear before the thunder begins. The sky over Trozen turns the color of a fresh bruise as the thunder builds not from clouds, but from something deeper, as if the earth itself is groaning in protest. The palace dogs howl and flee. Hippolytus clutches his resurrected chest, his slit-pupiled eyes darting wildly. You barely have time to grab your satchel before the first lightning bolt strikes the courtyard, blasting the olive tree where you buried the scale into splinters. A voice rolls across the ruins, deeper than earthquakes. E-N-O-U-G-H. You don't see so much as feel the air pressure crushing your lungs, the scent of scorched metal. Theseus and his courtiers are face down on the tiles, but some stubborn instinct keeps you upright. Your healer's hands still clutching your herbs. The god's presence focuses into a man-shaped storm cloud, his beard crackling with static. "First, you steal my brother's toys," he booms. "Then you empty his halls." Hades' complaint echoes in the spaces between his words. Not you try to speak, but your tongue sticks to your teeth. Zeus flicks a finger, and suddenly you're elsewhere, standing in a field of asphodel flowers that stretch to the horizon. The souls of the dead shuffle past, their faces blurred. At your feet lies Hippolytus's corpse, rotting peacefully as it was meant to. A mainstream fact: Greeks believed the asphodel meadows were the afterlife's neutral zone for ordinary souls, neither punished nor rewarded. Zeus's voice comes softer now, almost weary. "You stitch wounds, ease fevers good. But this..." He nudges Hippolytus's ghost with his sandal. "This is the thread of Moirai you're snipping, son of Apollo." You find your voice. "I only mended what was broken. Liar." The sky darkens. You wanted to prove no life is beyond your touch. Even your centaur warned you. Cust tears the satchel from your shoulder, scattering herbs across the underworld. The Gorgon blood vial rolls to Zeus's feet. He crushes it under heel. The resulting scream sounds eerily like Medusa. Historians still argue whether Zeus's judgment was truly about cosmic balance or simple politics. Hades' complaints undermining his rule. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some versions claim your faithful asp slithered into the underworld after you, becoming the first snake to ever enter Hades voluntarily. The verdict comes like a sentence carved in bone. No more resurrections. No more cheating fate. Lightning gathers in Zeus's palm, but for your past service, a mercy. The bolt hit your chest like a spear of white fire. For 3 heartbeats, you're nothing but screaming nerves. Then you're back in Trojans, ruins, gasping, alive, cursed. Hippolytus is gone. Theseus weeps into empty bandages in your hands. Your healing hands now tremble uncontrollably, fingers twitching toward any injury they see like compass needles to north. Zeus is parting. Whisper lingers. Let's see you fix what you can't stop touching. The tremors in your hands don't fade. They worsen by the time you stagger back to Epidaurus. Your fingers jerk like marionette strings toward every scabbed knee and coughing lung you pass. The sanctuary priests bar the gates at your approach, their fears sour on the wind. But the sacred snakes slither out to meet you, twining around your ankles in eerie solidarity. You take refuge in a fisherman's hut by the shore, where the salt air numbs the constant pull of your cursed hands. The asp stays coiled around your wrist like a living shackle. By moonlight, you experiment. A cut on your palm closes at a touch, but the skin knits too fast, leaving a twisted scar. A sick gull, you heal, flies off with a shrill cry only to drop dead at sunrise. Okay? Mainstream fact. Later, Hippocratic texts would call this the Asclepian paradox. When the cure proves as deadly as the disease, news of your exile spreads. Still, the desperate come. A shepherd drags his poisoned dog to your hut. You try to refuse, but your hands move without consent, pressing into the matted fur. The dog recovers, but its howls that night are disturbingly human. The shepherd never returns. Historians still argue whether these side effects were Zeus's true punishment. Borges your own unraveling sanity. Here's the quirky tidbit. Locals claim your hut's clay walls began growing strange herbs, moly, mandrake, even a flower no botanist could name. Its petals the color of a healing bruise. The worst is the dreams. You see Hippolytus wandering the underworld, his soul neither dead nor alive, turning in circles like a stuck chariot wheel. Hades glares up at you from every pool of water. Even Chiron appears once, his star map eyes disappointed. I taught you to mend, boy, he sighs, not to outrun the fates. Then comes the morning you wake to find Apollo standing at the foot of your pallet, sunlight pooling around him like molten gold. For a heartbeat, you think he's here to lift the curse? But his lyre is silent, his face unreadable. Father, you croak. He holds up a hand. Zeus won't kill you, but he won't stop me from trying. The arrow he knocks glows white hot. Cue, brace for the pain. But the asp strikes first, sinking fangs into Apollo's wrist. The god hisses, more surprised than hurt, and in that instant, you're elsewhere again, sprawled on a grassy slope under unfamiliar stars. A voice chuckles above you. Well, aren't you interesting? You look up into Artemis's silver-eyed grin, her bow slung carelessly over one shoulder. Behind her, a night sky swirls with constellations you don't recognize, including one shaped like a serpent coiled around a staff. Your staff, your legacy.artemis, offers a hand. Come on, healer, let's see if we can't repurpose that curse. Artemis's hunting lodge isn't what you expected. No skull trophies or dripping pelts, just a cozy wooden structure nestled between 2 ancient oaks. Its walls hung with drying herbs that smell like winter mornings. She kicks open the door with one sandaled foot, ushering you inside, where a hearth fire pops lazily. "You'll stay here," she declares, tossing a rabbit carcass onto the table. "Apollo won't tread my territory, not even for his own wounded pride." You stare at the rabbit. Its hind leg is mangled not from teeth, but from some crude trap. Artemis follows your gaze and shrugs. "Fix it." Your cursed hands twitch toward the injury before you can stop them. The moment your fingers touch the matted fur, the flesh knits itself back together with a sickening squelch. The rabbit kicks once, twice, then collapses, its eyes glassy. "Dead. Artemis whistles. Harsh. She pokes the corpse. "Zeus really did a number on you, huh?" A mainstream fact. Artemis was worshipped as a protector of wild animals and women in childbirth, two groups notoriously difficult to heal. Over the next weeks, she runs experiments. Deer with an arrow wound heals crooked, walks in circles. A songbird with a broken wing flies again straight into a tree. Its failure makes her grin wider. "You're like a living paradox," she muses one night, skinning the rabbit you couldn't save. The better you heal them, the quicker they die. You're not sure if it's the curse or her company, but you start noticing changes. Your hair grows unnaturally fast. Your pupils contract to slits in bright light. And the dreams, oh, the dreams. You see your sanctuary at Epidaurus, overgrown with vines. Your serpent staff, now wielded by strangers in strange lands. Historians still argue whether these were visions or just the delirium of divine proximity. Here's the quirky, key tidbit. Artemis's experiments include making you heal while drunk, while singing, even while upside down, all in the name of testing. Variables. The results are consistently disastrous. The breakthrough comes unexpectedly. A pregnant wolf limps into camp one dusk, her belly heavy, one paw mangled. Artemis tenses. This is no test. You reach for the wolf instinctively, but your hands freeze midair. Something in her golden eyes stops you. Not fear, it's a challenge. Slowly, deliberately, you remove Apollo's lyre string from your wrist. Where? Had you recovered it? Tie it around the wolf's injured leg. No direct touch, just proximity. The effect is immediate. The wound closes cleanly. Okay? The wolf licks your fingers once, then vanishes into the underbrush. 2 nights later, she returns with 4 healthy pups in tow. Artemis stares at you, her silver eyes gleaming. She says softly, "There's your loophole." You spend the next moon crafting staff carved from the lodge's oldest oak, twin serpents entwined up its length. At its tip, you tie the lyre string. When a fox cub is brought to you with a festering bite, you lay the staff beside it, not touching, just near. The wound heals slowly, naturally, no side effects. Artemis claps you on the back hard enough to bruise. "Congratulations, healer. You just invented." What? Medicine by proxy. That night, for the first time since Zeus's judgment, you dream of nothing at all. The oak staff becomes your anchor. Where once your cursed hands would seize control, now you channel their restless energy into the wood grain, letting the serpents absorb the worst of the backlash. Artemis watches approvingly as you heal at moving the staff across fevered brows, dangling it over infected wounds like a pendulum. The results aren't instant miracles, but they're stable. No more twisted limbs or midnight deaths. Word spreads, albeit cautiously. A nymph arrives with a poisoned arrowhead lodged in her thigh. You hover your staff above the wound, humming Apollo's old hymns under your breath. The arrowhead works itself free over 3 agonizing days, but the nymph lives. She leaves an offering of moonflowers that bloom only at midnight at Artemis's favorite. A mainstream fact. The earliest Asclepian temples later adopted this non-contact approach, using sacred rods to channel healing energy. One evening, as you're whittling, a new batch of staff's demand has skyrocketed. Artemis tosses a scroll at your feet. It's from Epidaurus. The priests, swallowing their pride, beg you to return. Their sanctuary flounders without you. Pilgrims go untreated. The sacred snakes have grown listless. Artemis arches an eyebrow. Well, will you crawl back to those? Quack priests. You run your thumb over the oak staff's grooves. The answer should be obvious, but a wolf howls in the distance. Then another. Artemis goes still, her head cocked. Visitors, she murmurs. They come at dawn. 3 women in threadbare cloaks, their faces lined with hard travel. The eldest holds a bundled child, its breathing shallow. We heard, she rasps, that the god-touched healer walks among beasts now. Artemis melts into the trees, leaving you alone with them. The child's fever is bad, the kind that steals minds before it takes lives. Your hands twitch violently, but you force them to grip the staff instead. 4 hours. You alternate between pressing its cool wood to the child's chest and brewing willow bark tea the old-fashioned way. On the 3rd day, the fever breaks. The women weep. The eldest presses a crudely carved snake figurine into your palm, their village's only offering. That night, Artemis finds you staring at the figurine. You're leaving, she states. You nod. She sighs dramatically, but helps you pack. Fine, but take these. She tosses you a quiver of arrows, not hunting weapons, but slender white shafts tipped with serpent fangs, for emergencies or obnoxious. Priest, historians still argue whether these healing arrows were literal or metaphorical. Here's the quirky tidbit. The child you saved. Later accounts claim she grew up to establish a women's healing commune near Thebes, one that famously treated warriors and slaves alike. As you trek back toward Epidaurus, your staff taps a steady rhythm against the earth. The asp, now too large to coil around your wrist, slithers at your heels. Somewhere above, a crow follows neither Apollo's nor Zeus's, just a watchful black shape against the blue. You realize, with quiet surprise, that the curse hasn't lessened. You've simply grown around it, like a tree around a blade. The gates of Epidaurus loom before you, their once bright paint now peeling under the relentless Mediterranean sun. The priests stand clustered like nervous crows in their black robes, their eyes darting from your staff to the massive asp coiled around your shoulders. Silence stretches between you until a child's giggle shatters it. A little girl darts past the priests, her sandals slapping against a stone. She skids to a stop before you, clutching a clay doll with one arm missing. Without a word, she points at your staff. You kneel, holding it out. Her tiny fingers brush the serpent carvings. The doll's arm promptly falls off completely. A mainstream fact, early Asclepian priests really did use healing dolls in rituals, though whether for actual medicine or psychological comfort remains debated. The priests groan. The girl beams. And just like that, the tension evaporates. You're given a new quarters larger, with a direct view of the sacred spring. The first night back, the temple snakes slither in through cracks in the walls, twining around your ankles in welcome. The asp hisses at them, but allows the intrusion. Your methods have changed. No more hands and miracles. Now, you train priests in the slow, steady arts, precise herb dosages, dream interpretation that doesn't rely on vague omens, and most controversially, cleanliness. You insist they wash their hands in boiled vinegar water before treatments. Several older priests resign in protest. Historians still argue whether your hygiene protocols reduced infections or just offended the gods of dirt. Here's the quirky tidbit. Your asp develops a taste for honey cakes. Soon, pilgrims arrive, bearing offerings, not just for you, but for the sacred serpent, leading to Epidaurus's first recorded case of temple-induced reptile obesity. Months blur into years. The sanctuary thrives under your guidance. though you never again touch a patient directly. Your staff becomes legendary, copied by healers across Greece. None seem to channel its power quite like yours. Then comes the letter from Athens. Hippocrates, a young physician you've corresponded with, writes of a strange new oath. He's drafted one that swears healers to do no harm. He seeks your blessing. You read it by lamplight. The words stirring memories, Chiron's warnings, Zeus's lightning, Artemis's wolves. The oath is good, principled, but as you trace the line about never giving a deadly drug, your cursed fingers twitch. You think of the Gorgon's blood, of Hippolytus's slit pupils, of all the ways healing can curdle into hubris. At dawn, you send your reply, swear the oath, then break it, but only when the alternative is worse. The asp flicks its tongue against your ear, as if in agreement. Outside, the first pilgrims of the day are already gathering, their hopeful murmurs rising with the sun. The seasons turn, and with them, your hair whitens like the froth on a healing spring. Pilgrims now speak of Asclepius the wise instead of Asclepius the cursed. The sanctuary has tripled in size, its colonnades stretching toward the sea, but you still prefer the old infirmary, its walls stained with decades of herb smoke, its floor worn smooth by countless anxious footsteps. One evening, as you're sorting dried mandrake roots, still useful for pain, if dosed correctly, a commotion erupts outside. Group of Athenian soldiers march in, their armor dented from recent battles. At their center, carried on a litter, lies none other than Socrates, not bleeding, but listless, his famous wit dulled by something no wound explains. Poison, their captain spits. Not the quick kind, the kind that rots the mind. You motioned them to place the philosopher in the dream chamber. Socrates manages a weak choke about charging you for his consultation fee, even as his fingers tremble uncontrollably. A mainstream fact, historical accounts confirm. Socrates visited healing temples, though whether he met you remains hotly debated. That night, you do something reckless. You lay your staff across Socrates' chest, then place your bare hands atop it, letting the curse flow through the wood like a lightning rod. His body arches off the pallet, muscles seizing. The soldiers reach for their swords, but your asp rears up, hissing, for 3 days. Socrates sweats out the poison in violent fits, alternating between delirious rants and startling clarity. On the 4th morning, he sits up, rubs his temples, and declares, "Well, that was educational." The cure leaves its mark, though. Socrates' pupils are now permanently dilated, his gaze unsettlingly intense. He studies you with those black wells of eyes. "You've been trying to outrun your own nature, healer," he murmurs, "but some men are meant to walk the knife's edge." The soldiers depart with their philosopher, his voice already rising in lively debate. You stare at your hands. The tremors are worse now, the skin oddly translucent. Historians still argue whether Socrates' recovery was genuine or the first documented placebo effect. Here's the quirky tidbit before leaving. Socrates allegedly pocketed one of your sacred snakes, claiming it would liven up symposiums. Contemporary accounts mention his later speeches being interrupted by mysterious hissing sounds. That night, you dream of Chiron for the first time in decades. The centaur stands waist deep in the river Styx, his equine half-hardy skeletal. "Took you long enough," he grumbles. "Now, quit dawdling. We've got patience." You wake with a start. The asp is coiled tightly around your wrist, its grip almost comforting. Outside, the first birds are testing the dawn. Your hands don't shake when you reach for your staff this time. The dream lingers like a bruise you can't stop pressing. Chiron's words echo as you walk the sanctuary at dawn, your staff tapping a slow rhythm against the flagstones. The air smells of baking bread in the sharp temps of the infirmaries. Antiseptic, washes vinegar, and time boiling in great copper kettles. A young priest intercepts you, wringing his hands. Another one arrived last night, he murmurs. From Crete, says he's been walking for weeks. In the dimmest corner of the dream chamber, a gaunt man lies shivering under a single wool blanket. His skin is the gray of storm clouds, his breath shallow. When you lift your staff, he grabs your wrist with surprising strength. No, he rasps. Not the wood, it's the other way. His eyes flick to your bare hands, and you understand? He knows about the curse, about what you can really do. A mainstream fact. Desperate patients often sought out Asclepian healers for last-ditch attempts at miracle cures, despite the risks. You hesitate. Then, slowly, you set the staff aside. The moment your fingers touch his chest, the room tilts. Colors bleed at the edges. The man's veins glow gold under his skin, his organs pulsing like distant stars. You see the sickness coiled in his lungs, a living thing of smoke and rot. Your curse rears up eagerly, a hound unleashed, and you pull. The disease floods into you like ink in water, okay? The man gasps as color rushes back to his face. Key. Meanwhile, taste copper and decay, your vision swimming. The asp hisses a warning from your shoulder, but it's too late. The sickness is inside now, writhing beneath your ribs. The Cretan sits up, marveling at his own hands. You barely make it outside before vomiting black bile onto the sacred spring stones. Historians still argue whether this was the first documented case of a healer intentionally taking illness into themselves, or just a very bad idea. Here's the quirky tidbit. The Cretan later claimed your eyes glowed like foxfire during the healing. He went on to found a cult that worshipped you as a disease eater. Though it was swiftly shut down by skeptical authorities. News spreads, of course. Soon, the desperate come not for gentle staff healings, but for the other kind. You oblige, though each cure leaves you weaker. The asp grows frantic, stealing your medicines to keep you awake. One evening, as you're recovering from curing a child's wasting sickness, a familiar voice draws from the shadows, still playing Martyr, I see. Artemis leans against a column, her silver bow glinting. She tosses an apple at your chest. Eat. Look like Hades warmed over. You bite into a tand, immediately spit out a wad of ambrosia-soaked pulp. The divine honey burns through your fatigue like sunlight through fog. Artemis smirks. Apollo's idea. Don't tell Zeus. For the first time in months, you laugh. The sound startles a nearby priest into dropping his scrolls. That night, you dream of Chiron again. It's time. He's whole no river, no rot. Key nods approvingly at the half-eaten ambrosia apple in your hand. Took you long enough, he repeats. But now, it sounds like praise. The ambrosia apple works for exactly 17 days each morning. You wake stronger till the 18th dawn, when your hands shake worse than ever. Your vision swimming with phantom lights. The asp abandons your shoulder to coil around the remaining apple core, guarding it like a dragon with treasure. Pilgrims keep coming, a Spartan with a spear wound that won't close. A poetess whose voice vanished after a bad oyster. You heal them the old way now, letting your cursed hands absorb their ailments, while the ambrosia's fading glow keeps you upright. Each cure leaves you colder, as if your veins are filling with winter. Then comes the Athenian girl. She can't be more than 8. Her dark curls matted with fever sweat. Her father, a prominent general, kneels despite his armor. The physicians say it's the lung sickness, that she won't. His voice breaks. You know this disease. It took half a village in your wandering years. A mainstream fact. Ancient Greek cities often quarantined consumptive patients, believing the illness spread via bad air. The moment your fingers brush the girl's chest, the truth hits. This isn't just lung sickness. It's the same creeping rot you pulled from. The Cretan, now evolved, hungrier, It leaps into you eagerly, and suddenly you're on your knees, gasping. The general shouts for help, but your vision is already tunneling. The last thing you see before darkness takes you is the asp striking not at the girl, but at you, its fangs sinking into your wrist. You wake to fireflies. No, not fireflies. Stars. You're outside, sprawled on the slope behind the sanctuary where patience once took the sun. The world smells of crushed grass and distant lightning, and looming over you, his golden lyre, silent for once, is Apollo. Idiot, he says fondly. Your voice comes out a croak. Did I die? Apollo flicks your forehead. Tried to. That snake of yours has better sense than you. He nods too. Or the asp lies coiled around your staff, its scales dull with exhaustion. Bought you time? Not much. You try to sit up. Your body refuses. Apollo sighs. Zeus won't take you into Olympus, but he's relented on one point. Gestures upward. At first, you see only stars. Then, a new constellation, faint but unmistakable. A serpent coiled around a staff. Historians still argue whether this celestial addition was astronomical fact or poetic license. Here's the quirky tidbit. The general's daughter recovered fully and later became one of the few female physicians recorded in classical Athens, though she always credited the snake's bite for her calling that Apollo stands brushing grass from his kitten. Well, any last words? Requests? You think of Chiron's river, of Artemis's wolves, of the countless hands that will someday lift versions of your staff in places you'll never see. Keep the snakes, you murmur. Apollo rolls his eyes, but he's smiling as the darkness takes you again, gentler this time. The darkness doesn't last. You wake to the sound of waves, not the gentle lapping of Epidaurus' shore, but the rhythmic crash of some vast, unseen sea. The air smells of ozone and damp stone. Above you, the serpent staff constellation glows, brighter than it ever did in life, its stars pulsing like a heartbeat. A shadow blocks the light. Took you long enough. Chiron stands over you, his equine legs restored, a wineskin slung over one shoulder. Behind him stretches a meadow of asphodel flowers, their pale petals swaying in a wind you can't feel. You sit up slowly, your hands don't shake. Is this the afterlife? More like the waiting room. The centaur offers the wineskin. The liquid inside tastes like sunlight and pine sap nostalgia distilled. He leads you through the meadow, past souls who glance up curiously. Some you recognize. The Cretan disease eater, the general's daughter now grown. Even Hippolytus, who waves cheerfully, his slit pupils gleaming. A mainstream fact. Greeks believed heroes and the virtuous dead dwelled in Elysium, but the in-between. Meadows were for those whose stories weren't quite finished. Chiron stops at a sheer cliff overlooking the starry sea. Your turn, he says, pointing downward. The water reflects not sky, but scenes. A Roman physician draping a snake-entwined staff across a gladiator's wounds. A medieval alchemist scribbling your name beside a recipe for mercury-laced healing. Potions. A modern ambulance, its side emblazoned with your symbol. They remember you, Chiron says. Mostly wrong, but that's mortals for you. Historians still argue whether the rod of Asclepius' single snake was deliberately altered to become the caduceus, two snakes, due to a printing error in 16th century medical texts. Here's the quirky tidbit. The asp who bit you. It allegedly slithered into Apollo's temple and refused to leave until they built it a miniature. Golden shrine. Chiron nudges you toward the cliff's edge. Go on. They're waiting. You hesitate. Who's the push is gentle but firm. You tumble into the starry sea and wake, gasping in a white-walled room. Machines beep nearby. A nurse adjusts your IV, her scrubs bearing a familiar serpentine staff emblem. Welcome back, she says. You gave us quite a scare. Outside the window, a crow cocks its head, one gleaming eye fixed on yours. The hospital room dissolves like mist as the crow's cry lingers in your ears. Suddenly, you're standing on a windswept hill overlooking Epidorsoni. It's not the sanctuary you remember. The columns are crumbling, the sacred spring choked with ivy. A lone tourist snaps photos where priests once chanted. Time has passed. More than you can fathom, yet something tugs you forward down the overgrown path to the old infirmary. The roof has collapsed, but in its shadow, a single stubborn plant grows, a silvery herb with leaves shaped like serpents' tongues. When you brush it, your fingers pass through ghostly. But the scent, the scent is real. Moly, mandrake, and something else, something Chiron never named, a mainstream fact. Modern excavations at Epidaurus uncovered votive offerings left centuries after your death, teeny clay body parts, thank you notes scratched on pottery shards. A child's laughter startles you. A little girl crouches in the ruins, poking at a grass snake sunning itself on the stones. Her mother calls from the tourist path, but the girl whispers, "Wait." She places her palm near the snake nut, touching, just like you taught. The snake flicks its tongue at her, unhurried, before sliding away. The wind shifts, carrying the salt scent of the distant sea. You remember Apollo's smirk, Artemis's wolves, the weight of your staff in calloused hands. The memories don't hurt anymore. They're just stories now. Yours, theirs. Historians still argue whether your myth represents humanity's first grasp at scientific medicine or just another comforting fable. Here's the quirky tidbit. That hospital you glimpsed, Ruma says, night shift. Nurses sometimes find an ass boiled in the staff lounge. It never bites, just watches. The sun dips lower, gilding the ruins. The little girl runs to her mother, chattering about snakes. Somewhere, a lyre string hums a note only the wind can hear. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. And so, we let the story settle, like herbs steeping in warm water, their essence slowly coloring the liquid gold. The tale of Asclepius was never just about medicine or myth, but about the fragile, furious human instinct to mend what's broken even when the cost is steep. Even when the world insists some fractures are forever. Perhaps that's why his symbol endures in hospitals worldwide. Not because we still believe in gods who walk among us, but because we still need reminders that healing is equal parts science and stubborn hope. That every bandage, every syringe, every gentle hand on a fevered brow is a quiet defiance of entropy itself. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, picture not ruins, but roots, how they grow unseen, how they split stone, given time. Think of the last time you healed someone, or were healed in turn. A shared umbrella in the rain. A whispered, "I'm here." Cool palm on your forehead when the world spun too fast. The methods change. The miracle doesn't breathe in, out, deeper. Now, let the stars above whisper their old, old stories. And if you dream of serpents, don't fear them. They're just keeping watch.